Hello and welcome to another video. A couple of years ago, I did a video on my channel of 10, I think it was 10 Korean thriller movie recommendations. I love a good Korean thriller. They make thrillers like no other country can, and there's some of the best ones out there. So I made a video recommending, I think it was 10 different Korean thrillers, and I've always been meaning to do a follow-up. And so here today, we're finally doing that. I have 5 more Korean thriller movie recommendations I'm going to share. First, we have Exuma. This is the most recent released movie on here. This came out in 2024, and it's one I just added to my collection not too long ago. I mentioned that this was the one that kind of inspired me to finally go and make this follow-up video, but this movie kind of tells the process of excavating a family gravesite and relocating it to another location, and that kind of unleashes this supernatural entity that has consequences for both the family and the mortician that are involved. So it's a really, really interesting story. That story and the cover on here alone is what inspired me to want to check this one out. It has a really great blend of different genres. There's thriller, there's mystery, there's some horror thrown in there, and each one is really well balanced throughout. You really feel a good balance within the tones of the movie and the different genres that it's kind of playing through. It's visually excellent. It's really crisp. It has this darkness to it that I think is really well visualized on the screen. And then the characters there's quite a few main characters in it. There's at least 3 that I would say are kind of main characters, probably 2 most prominent main characters, but there's 3 to 5 overall main characters in the story. And each one has its own arcs and a really good variety in the different personalities and stuff to them. And each one's arc feels well explored individually and contributes well to the main overall story. Like I said, I went into this one pretty much blind, and that's how I recommend watching it. So pretty much watch it just based on what I've said here. It has some really cool themes throughout it that I really most latched onto with the movie. There's themes on greed and moral corruption, and the kind of resulting generational sin that might come from something like that. The way that it explores how faith might be misused, especially in terms of different religions, because shamanism is pretty prominent throughout this film. And watching that from someone who comes from a point of view of Christianity, I thought that was a really interesting exploration of how faith might be misused through a movie. And then just the different ramifications of that misuse and the corruption and the greed, all just really well explored thematically throughout the movie. I gave this movie a 4 out of 5 stars. Next, we have one that I do not have in the collection yet. I do need to pick it up at some point, but that is The Wailing. This movie was released in 2016, and it tells the story of soon after a stranger moves into this village, this small town, there's a mysterious sickness that starts spreading. And a policeman who's kind of drawn into this incident initially kind of gets this personal involvement when his daughter's life is on the line, and he has to solve this mystery in order to save her life. The movie is kind of insane. It really leaves the viewer with a lot to consider and process once those credits start rolling. It's one that I just kind of sat with. I've only seen this once, but I still remember when the credits started rolling, I just kind of sat there and it was quite a thing to look back on everything that I just experienced. It's not a short movie by any means. It's a little over 2.5 hours, I think, but just the heaviness of the film, really impactful for sure. It is absolutely gorgeous visually. It is very well acted and paced. The performances are really, really good throughout. As far as kind of a thriller horror angle on this one, it is legitimately frightening at times, I think. Now, this one is a bit of a slow burn horror, so if you're someone who likes a little bit more of an upbeat, faster pace, you do have to kind of give this one a little bit more attention, as it is a bit of a slower burn, but that attention you give will be well rewarded throughout and as things progress. Its themes kind of revolve around the nature of evil and how faith and doubt come into play. That's a very prominent theme for the main character that we follow throughout this one, is the faith that he has going in, how it is challenged, and how he faces carrying that faith while also having doubt. It's another one that focuses on shamanism kind of heavily, and the clash of religious views in this one is really interesting, I think, as well, and very, very discussional. It's very, very discussive? I think I made up a word, I don't know. But the way that those religious views and the spiritual corruption kind of lead to a dark ending. It's definitely a dark ending without spoiling anything, but it showcases the challenges of how far we will take our own faith when there's not always enough substance or maybe the lack of answers in the moral questions that you're asking throughout. This one did score a little bit lower than Exuma for me at 3.5 stars, but I feel like it could move up a bit in rewatches. Next, back to one that is in the collection, we have The Gangster, the Cop, the Devil. This is one that was released in 2019, and the title is also basically the synopsis. It is a gangster and a cop hunting down a serial killer. That's intriguing. The first time I watched this one, I went in pretty blind. It was based on a friend's recommendation. I think they picked it up and showed the Blu-ray, and I was like, that looks really cool. I like that guy as an actor. I'm going to check this one out. So I knew very little, but based on what I had heard and how the movie looked here and who was involved, I was pretty sure it was right up my alley. The movie is absolutely exhilarating. It is edge of your seat action. And I found myself really supporting kind of both sides of things. There's definitely a moral question when it comes to the gangster and the cop, because like you said, they're working together to catch this serial killer, and they each have different morals going into this, and each one is kind of put into question of the redemption of the gangster side of things versus the moral ambiguity of the cop side of things. So it's really well explored morality-wise throughout, and the different sides and how they play back and forth in what's right and what's wrong in hunting down this serial killer. As far as standouts on this one, there's an excellent car chase sequence. There's a brutal brawl fight that it really is definitely a standout as far as fight sequences go. And the soundtrack is absolutely invigorating, one that just really pumps you up. I think I've said before in this channel, and I'll continue to say, I wish the soundtrack would be released for this one because I really love it. Thematically, there's themes on justice, obviously, when it's a gangster and a cop hunting down a serial killer, but also just kind of the moral gray areas of good versus evil, judgment, what's right, what's the proper way to judge something, and the different ways that different people might approach that theme, and then those moral consequences that would result from it. This is one that not everybody would probably say it's perfect, and maybe I wouldn't even, but it was just everything I was looking for at the time. I quickly revisited it and was eager to show it to some friends, so for me, it's a 5 out of 5 movie. Next, I'm going with a double on this one because these are 2 movies, but it's a part 1, part 2, so for 4 and 5, you get Along with the Gods, and part 1 is The Two Worlds, and part 2 is The Last 49 Days. So these movies were released in 2017 and 2018. And the first one tells the story of a man who, after a heroic death, which, not a spoiler, obviously it's in the synopsis and it's the first shot in the movie, but after a heroic death, a man navigates the afterlife with 3 spiritual guides. And then kind of for the second one, a guardian helps another man in the afterlife who is connected to the man in the first movie. So there's definitely a very strong connection throughout both of them as a part 1 and a part 2, but they're also individualistic enough that they kind of work on their own, but are very, very enhanced when you experience them together. These movies both have a very unique feel. I've really never experienced a movie quite like these two and how it explores, especially just the afterlife in general, I thought was really interesting just as someone who's not familiar with the Korean view of the afterlife. I found that a really intriguing aspect of these movies. Each region of the underworld has a very distinct style to it. There's a lot of interesting commentary throughout, and it just has really cool world building. Just what's an initially compelling story from the main character of each one that we get introduced to becomes even more compelling and more interesting the way that these guardians, these spiritual guardians, are intertwined. They're kind of the connecting piece between both of these stories here, but the way that they become more and more involved in the stories almost kind of moves them up to main character status. There's lots of twists and turns, which is really cool. A lot of surprises, which I think is fun. And the thematic focus, especially in the second film, The Last 49 Days, on forgiveness, was a really neat exploration. I gave both of these movies a 4 out of 5 stars. So those are 5 more recommendations for some Korean thrillers that I think are really great and you should check out. Hopefully you do. And if you are looking for some other recommendations, go back to my video from a couple of years ago recommending 10 or so more Korean thrillers. So now I have given you like 15 movies between these 2 videos that I recommend checking out. Thanks for sticking around to the end of this video. I'll see you in the next one.